Welcome everybody. We save time, we lose time, we rob and get robbed of time. We kill time and sometimes we have all the time in the world. But not a one of us has the power to stop the march of time or slow it down. Is it something beyond our control? In fact, no. While we cannot influence the flow of time, we still can get the most out of it. Becoming a wise time manager sometimes is really hard. We have our job, our family, and all the conflicts between them, but the results are worth the effort. Being the master of your time means getting more done, staying energized, and doing more things you enjoy. So today, we are going to have a great discussion about time management to understand how to find the so desired balance between work and life. And a pleasure to talk to someone who is highly recognized by her colleagues for being an incredible time manager, Julia Lascher. Thank you for being here with us and making some time for this interview.
Hi, Roberto. It is a great pleasure to be here today, and thank you for this invitation. Feels really good to talk about time management because this is something so important in so many different ways. Roberto, most of us simply can't get out of this infinite loop of work, either because of our pride in our work or the sense of responsibility that often makes us tip the scales in favor of our work rather than other activities, not knowing that the negative results of this imbalance ends up affecting both our careers and our private lives.
Time management is indeed critical for well-being. Starting broadly, what do you do in order to keep the balance in your time?
Well, this is a pretty tricky subject. I could even say that some of us maybe think that it's just impossible to find balance because of our realities. In my case, for example, I must deal with more than 100 emails per day and sometimes more than 60 meetings and calls. And I'm not even counting the time that I need to do the actual work that comes as a result of these mails and calls. But here's what I do. I prioritize and do activities that enhance my productivity and give me energy, and eradicate those that do the opposite. For the example, in my case, I love to take discussions and learn from colleagues and my friends and my family. But I find the channels of things like Facebook and Instagram particularly draining and time-consuming, so I choose other ways to connect. Another way I find balance is through exercise, and in my case, it's yoga. I think it helps me disconnect, it's relaxing, and it really helps me recharge.
Thanks, Julia. And talking about recharge, we saw in a study made last year about 13,000 workers around the globe that 71% of them have experienced burnout in 2020. And it's mostly due to work about work or duplicated work. So how do you think people can deal with burnout?
Well, my solution for dealing with burnout is to constantly have a clear view of my agenda. So for me, organization and structure are critical. And speaking of organization, if you go to the microsite we created for this session, you can see that my team already pre-populated it with materials on different types of time management approaches. But I digress. Going back to your question, independently of the time management strategy you choose, if you manage to organize, to plan your days, you take control of how much work you can do. And you take control of the conditions on how to meet your deadlines. You drive the bus doesn't drive you. And time management isn't only about building structure, it's about having a sound mind and body to cope with many things. For example, I always tell my team to eat properly, to stay hydrated, to pay attention to family and friends because these are the people that will help them disconnect. And that's one of the most important things to do to avoid burnout. So in essence, in Tetra Pak, with so many high-performing team members, I remind everyone to look after themselves because we need the team strong and healthy. And that's the heart of time management.
Thanks, Julia. And being part of your team, I focus on applying all those advice. And it is great, by the way, to agree on this common set of well-being rules, especially when you ask people to push on performance. Back to you and to the main topic. In average, an high-level executive deals with at least 37 meetings per week. It means 7 per day with different lengths, and spend 70% of the work time in meetings. So you mentioned that you are attending 16 meetings per day, so you are much above average. And you are managing also all the projects you are driving, and on top, all your other duties. If we talk about meetings, that is the biggest part of your working day, right? So how do you manage to be productive and effective?
Well, this is a really good question because it's a reality for many of our colleagues. Whilst we may not be able to reduce the number of meetings that we have, we can still affect the quality of the meetings. So in the meetings for which I'm responsible, I'm implementing these 7 golden rules. The first is to set a clear agenda and objectives beforehand, and to organize my meetings respecting the time of others, but also respecting my own time. I try to cap meetings at 45 minutes, and in doing so, it allows me to send pre-reading material so that I can focus the meetings on discussions or decisions. I try to avoid having meetings only for updates. In some cases, it's better to send an email, post a message on Teams, or create an audio message. I only invite the relevant audience and only the relevant audience. I don't want people to have fear of missing out, FOMO. I want to create a good follow-up process, and I find that oftentimes that logbooks are a good way not only to follow up, but sometimes they can also take the place of meetings.
Besides the time that you may gain if you start to manage your meetings, can you share with us some other tips or tricks that you implement in your day-to-day?
I think there are a number of well-known tips, but let me reiterate that or reinforce some of them. For example, figure out how you're currently spending your time and create a daily schedule and stick to it. Group similar tasks together and assign time limits to those tasks. Prepare well and be organized, and try to do small tasks between meetings. Eliminate distractions and learn how to say no, but most importantly, avoid multitasking. A good time manager does one thing at a time.
Giulia, work often takes precedence over everything else in our life. Our desire to succeed professionally can push us to set aside our own well-being. So creating an harmonious work-life balance is critical to improving our physical, emotional, and mental well-being, and it's also important for our career. So what advice can you give us to be successful in our careers with a healthy work-life balance?
When you hear work-life balance, you might imagine having an extremely productive day at work, then leaving early to spend time with friends and family. While this may seem ideal, it's not always possible. Don't strive for a perfect schedule. Strive for a realistic one. Some days you might focus more on work, while other days you might have more time and energy to pursue your hobbies or spend time with loved ones. Balance is achieved over time, not each day. It's important to be flexible and regularly assess your goals and priorities. Sometimes your children need more attention, and sometimes you may need to travel for work. Having flexibility to assess and adjust your focus is the key to finding balance. And one important final point, and maybe some of you will find this obvious or you might find it silly, but I'm going to say it because you mentioned it earlier when you said that we should strive to do more things we enjoy. I honestly don't struggle with work-life balance because I'm really passionate about the job that I have, about the colleagues I work with, and about the company I work for. In essence, and maybe an oversimplified way to find work-life balance, is to love what you do. And I love what I do, and the work therefore becomes an integral part of my life, defines who I am, and helps shape the person I aspire to become.
Giulia, thank you very much for your time. And now we have the opportunity to implement some of these tips that you shared with us today. And we will also open up for questions from the audience to talk more about this very important topic. Thank you again.
Thank you, Roberto.